Good morning and welcome to the Department of Behavioral Health COVID update. Usually I'm doing this in the afternoon, so I had to really think about it, not to say good afternoon. But here we are in the morning, and I'll give you a quick update. All right, this month is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, and next week we'll be having a Facebook Live and YouTube Live event talking about understanding the impact of Asian hate on the mental health and wellness of the Asian community. And it's really important to us to highlight these issues of racism and violence against a well-respected and valued part of our community. And so please tune in next week and learn more about this. As most of you know, it's also Mental Health Awareness Month with our theme of Hope for Change. I did want to highlight that we had an event last week on Saturday, a partnership with the Fresno Grizzlies, where they highlighted mental health awareness. It was really incredible. They had a lot of their players do video interviews talking about the importance of mental health awareness. And behind me on the screen, you can see the field at the Grizzlies Chukchansi Park, and they carved in to the field our green ribbon. So really awesome event. Another event coming up, and this is on Thursday, May 27th, is cross-cultural workshop on the LGBTQ plus community, identity, and personal pronouns. Another opportunity during Mental Health Awareness Month to really learn more about another valued part of our community and the importance of all of us using our preferred pronouns. And it's kind of like the stigma around mental health. When all of us use our pronouns, it just elevates the validity of each person's own identity and their desired way of how we interact with them and recognize them and speak about them. And so it's really, I think, a worthwhile endeavor to learn more about that. I know I've read some articles that helped guide me to understand why it's important in my personal communications to use my personal pronouns. And so I highly encourage you to do it as well. All right. Off to COVID. We continue to have COVID in the world, as you all know. 164 million cases of COVID, 3.4 million deaths, and now 1.5 billion doses of vaccine administered, which is completely awesome. In the United States, we've had 33 million cases of COVID, 587,743 deaths, so over almost 600,000 deaths, and now 276.8 million doses of vaccine administered. And really, that amount of vaccine administration is really what is getting us to the place where we can begin to have a more normal experience out in the world, and we'll talk about that in a minute. California has 3.67 million cases of35 deaths, and now 63.5 million doses 35 million doses of vaccine. We are now at about a 1.1 positivity rate and continuing to have a slight decrease each week. The last couple of weeks, we've decreased by 0.1. Again, I'll remind you, every week I remind you that really getting to that 1% or below is where we shouldn't see large outbreaks in our community, and that's going to be important as we move forward. In Fresno County, we've had 102,056 cases of COVID, 1,690 deaths. And in the hospital, yesterday it was reported that we had 67 people in the hospital. Today it's actually 65. So we're now starting to see a more steady decline in the hospitalizations. Remember, if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a little bit of a fluctuation there. It shows as coming down, but in between we would see fluctuations, including as recently as last week. So we should expect to see a steady decline now, particularly particularly as we get our positivity rate down. With that said, our positivity rate actually bumped up slightly this last week, tiny amount, 0.1%. And our new cases are at 4.1 per day per 100,000 population. We really need to get that amount down, less than 2 if we're going to get to the yellow tier. Getting to the yellow tier will give us even more freedoms, and I think it's a great goal to get there by the time the mask mandate gets lifted starting in June. Across the state, we continue to see some progress towards lower levels of COVID. We aren't seeing any counties in the purple, and each week we see 1, 2, 3 counties move from either the red to the orange or the orange to the yellow. Still predominantly orange, same tier that we're in, so we're all working hard to get down to the yellow. Truly make us a golden state. All right. In Fresno County, we now have had 250,000 doses of vaccine administered. That's awesome. 474,000 doses. We have over 307,000 people fully vaccinated in our county, and another 98,000 who are partially vaccinated. We are seeing a little bit of an increase this week with the opening of the tier to 12 to 15. And that is allowing kids 12 to 15 years old to get the Pfizer vaccine. That's the only vaccine that is allowed. And that's a 2-dose vaccine, and so and those doses are 21 days apart. So we should see this number continue to increase as we get more and more. In that over 65 population, we're now up to 81.6, so each week a little more penetration into the community, particularly in areas where people might have had trouble getting a vaccine or maybe just needed a little more time to make that decision for themselves. So happy to see that continue to creep up. So, we have about 135,000 individuals in our community who are over 65, and now 110,275 of them have had at least 1 dose. That's awesome. So we are seeing cases trend down. Hospitalizations now are trending steadily downward. We also are seeing very few deaths reported. I think we've had less than 10 or 15 over the last few weeks, and those vaccinations are now being made available to that younger population. So all signs are pointing towards us getting to the place where we've really truly learned to live with COVID. We have not eradicated COVID. We will not eradicate COVID. COVID is going to be around with us for probably years to come, barring some new vaccine that has a different type of action that results in truly eradicating COVID. Likely, like other diseases, viruses that we've learned to live with, we'll be living with COVID for some time. I really want to highlight that we're in a really important transitional period of time. And that transitional period of time is we've all gotten used to wearing these masks and doing the physical distancing. And all of a sudden, particularly with the CDC's announcement last week that we could take off our masks if we're vaccinated, all of a sudden we're being given freedoms and relief from some of these mandates that not everyone's comfortable with. We still have people, myself included, I'll probably wear a mask in stores and places like that for some time, even if we don't have to. And I'm vaccinated, but I'm just comfortable doing that. And so we recognize that some of you may have some anxiety and some fear, and somehow we have to find a bridge between fear and anxiety and facts. And as these numbers go down, and as we don't see the cases and the hospitalizations, we're going to have to accept the fact that we have really gotten COVID down to a level that we can safely not wear masks. We can safely, if we're vaccinated, and we can safely begin to return to a more normal living situation. So there's two reasons that's important. One, getting all of us to a comfort level, but more importantly, two, making ourselves available to meet the needs of the people we serve in an in-person setting. We are seeing significant increases in children in crisis, violence in our community, domestic violence. I talked about this last week. I really can't emphasize enough that we need to be prepared to meet this need within our community. We talked very early on that as the COVID pandemic decreased, a mental health pandemic could emerge, and that is what we're seeing. Newer reports have shown that we had significant increase in overdose deaths over the last year, and we really believe that several things are happening. One, anxiety, depression have increased, but also everyone's talking about their own mental health. And that's really great news with respect to normalizing that conversation, reducing stigma, making it more likely that people will reach out for help, and making the need for services and the willingness to get services up, which makes the demand for our services increased. And we have to meet that demand. Certainly we can continue where it's appropriate, where an individual prefers to be seen through a telehealth appointment. We can continue to do that, but we also need to be prepared to do in-person services. So you will see us really pushing to create those safe environments to ensure that we're following guidance and guidelines to create safe spaces for people to be served. And that report or our plan will be published in the next couple of weeks, hopefully by June 1st, and we'll really push hard to get that plan put into place. And so I just want to keep emphasizing that with all of you so that you understand that that is the direction we're going, and we'll continue to provide you with information so that you can ease your fears and anxiety as well, that we're doing everything we need to do to make it safe. And with that, we continue to see downward trends nationwide. We have that new CDC guidance that we're sorting through locally and at a statewide level, but basically that's where we're at. So I'm going to look over here and see if there's any questions. For the positions that are able to do 99% of their work remotely, why is there a big push to get everyone back in offices right away when we admit that COVID hasn't gone away and is still a risk? That's a great question. I'm not sure exactly where the feeling that there's a big push to get everyone back is coming from. What I have to emphasize, and I've said this multiple times, so I just want to remind you again, the county pre-COVID was working on a pilot project for telework. That pilot project is not complete. What it enabled us to do fairly quickly was, under the emergency orders, create an opportunity for everyone as much as possible to work remotely. But there's a lot more work that has to be done to do that on a permanent basis. And we are committed to doing that work. We're in the process of doing that work, but that work is not done. And once COVID is decreased to the point that, yes, it's a risk, but it's not nearly the risk it was, so we have to be realistic about that. There are many, many risks in the world. There's a risk for you to get in your car each day. There's a risk, with lots of the activities you choose to do. And so it's a manageable risk. When we get COVID to be a manageable risk, not a high risk with a high likelihood that bringing you back to work will result in illness or death, then we're going to do that. And the reason we're going to do that is because we need to meet the needs of the people we serve. I anticipate that for some of you, if you are in a situation now where you share an office or you work in an area where there's open workspaces, you'll likely be in a hybrid situation, which means there'll be some days you're at work and some days you can continue to work from home as we work through the the guidelines and guidance, and before we get to the place where those restrictions can be diminished. If you have a private office, you'll be coming back to work. And so it's safe to do so. There's no reason not to do so. And so that's what our plan is to do while we work on opportunities in the future for positions that could have a telework component to them. And so that's my commitment. I will continue to focus on that. And until such time as we have that offering on a permanent formal basis, we'll return to how we were pre-pandemic. I don't have any other questions. And so, as usual, for those of you watching live or if you're watching a recording of this, please feel free to send me questions. Remember, next week we won't have a COVID update, but we will have our all-staff meeting. So the focus next week will be on things mostly not COVID. And so I look forward to having a little more of a normal presentation next week. And have a great weekend, and we will see you then.